Hey guys, did you receive my Google Classroom of the notes from yesterday? Yes, you opened? Before you reach home, it was already there. Right? Good. Did you manage to go to the Google Classroom? Not yet? Okay. Oh, you need to follow. Did you go to the Google Classroom? Google Classroom? What happened? I'm okay? Muchas gracias.
Everything else, yeah.
Relax. Yes, of course. This. Yes, yes. It's very good. Yes. And we are okay. Gracias. Long story. You should have asked when I said this. Because yes, you have to go to, yes, your Gmail or the content address. Got it? Okay, lagyan mo the Gmail or the content address. Then after that, it's enough. Your Gmail address, huh? Okay? For your, use your Gmail address, your comment address, you know? You can just, login, like that. Okay, oh my god, we are about. Okay, so go there. So there. Many dots, yes. Or more. Join class. Get the code I gave you. Congratulations, welcome. It's all there. If you're from the beginning, that's okay. Just giving you. The first one on the data starts with the class, with the schedule, welcome message, and then materials. And so welcome message, and schedule, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. You click it, the handout is there. Okay? Yesterday discussion, you can go back. What is it? Okay, go down. I post last night. Down. And then go up. Go to the first one. Okay, see? Okay. And attachment. See? You attach this one. This is the one we discussed today. You see? Go down. This is all there. Okay, hi, everybody. Sorry. I'm a few minutes late. Okay, are you ready? Hello? Are you awake? Oh, you're about to sleep now, huh? Okay, all right. Welcome to class, ladies and gentlemen. All right. A number of things today. First. Okay? I will promise to you that I shall make sure you are going to be awake in the afternoon today. All right? I'll try my very best to keep you awake. Okay? All right. So we'll do a lot of different things. So, agenda. Okay? Let's talk about what we expect to finish today. Number 1, I will review throughput accounting. How? 2 things. I will do a mind map for throughput, so you get a summary of what we talked about last night. Yes? Right? And I believe I have a homework that I gave you, correct? Yeah, what is the name of the company? Okay, who is the company I gave you? Youngco. Okay, very good. Okay, so Youngco. Remember, I asked you to do requirement A and requirement B. All right, good. Second part, we are going to talk about life cycle costing today. And I'm going to talk to you about EMA. Do you remember what I said about EMA? What is it called? Environmental Management Accounting. Okay? And in this chapter, I will give you a technical paper. In other words, this is a write-up from the examiner's office, okay? Talking about what they expect you to master when it comes to EMA. All right? That is our plan. If we still have time, which is for the next class, we are going to do an introduction. By the way, after this, section A of your syllabus is done. It's time to go to section B. And section B starts with decision-making techniques. Okay, this is already section B, all right, of your syllabus. And the first chapter in the syllabus is chapter 3, which is CVP analysis. Do you know what is CVP? From previous lessons? No? Okay. Cost, volume, profit analysis. Okay? So, that is our plan. If we cannot, we'll try and do as much as we can today. Alright? So, for those who just came in, we are going to start with a review. Did you do your homework from last night? Oh, I can see from your eyes. You were so tired, you went home, you did not open anything anymore. All right. Last night, before you left, or maybe before you left, you reached home, I already posted our notes from yesterday's discussion. Okay? It's on your Google Classroom. So if you open it, the PDF format is there. Okay? So I'm giving you all the tools. All you need to do is open it and study when you get home or at your study time. All right. We do a mind map first. Let's summarize all about throughput. Okay? Now, you work with me, ladies and gentlemen, because this is your review. Okay? So, throughput accounting. All right. Now, okay. Throughput accounting started, okay, so if we're talking about throughput, it started because there is what we call, all right, theory, you remember, T-O-C. What was that? Theory of constraint. What is that theory of constraint? What is that? What is a constraint? It's a factor that what? That limits what? Production. Very good. So these are the factors that limit production. What do we call that? Remember the word that we use? It's a bottleneck. You remember? Okay. So we talked about bottlenecks. So in theory of constraint, our focus is where? Focus is on these constraints. Do you understand? Why we are focusing on these constraints? Because we want to what? To improve. In other words, we want to remove the constraint, correct? Remove constraints so that what gets improved? Okay, to improve what? What do you want to improve? Improve production, therefore it will improve what? Sales, and therefore will improve profit, correct? Well done, well said. Okay? So, if I give you an example here on the bottleneck, alright, so let's say I give you the following situation. You remember I talked to you about process? It can be a process, it can be a machine, correct? Okay. So A, B, C. And what happened? Okay. Let's say this is their output per hour. Okay. 1,000 pieces. Okay, pieces. 750 pieces. 1,000 pieces. Tell me, which one is the bottleneck? Okay, so B is your bottleneck. Yes? You understand? Because that B process, the output is so small because it takes them longer or shorter to do it. Again, let process B, the output is so smaller than the rest because the process takes longer or shorter? Longer, which means it is inefficiency, correct? A whole theory of constraints is that we focus on that because that restricts production and therefore restricts the sale and therefore is a factor that lowers your profit. You improve on the constraint means you improve on output, you improve sales, and therefore improve profit. Okay? That is the whole story behind the theory of constraint. Now, alright, so with this, basically, All right, we said in the more modern times, what is the modern kind of like manufacturing idea that this one supports? You remember what did I talk about? JIT. What does it mean? Okay, so this one is, okay, it says you produce as when the customer requires it, correct? Which means the whole idea is demand, okay, led. In other words, it depends on the demand. The production demand leads production. Okay? Demand leads production. In this idea, inventory is what? Oh, inventory is bad. That is why they don't like inventory, correct? Okay. In this idea, okay, what do they do with the raw materials then? If they produce only in time, what happened? Do they also have raw materials inventory? No, there is no raw materials inventory. So materials are ordered when what? Okay, when required or when needed. Very good. Okay? Alright, so, which means they must be basically make sure that whatever they need, they have to make sure that they get the supplier to deliver on time. So they have to make sure the supplier is reliable. You understand? Because they only order at the time they need. Okay, and then what else? In this area, because you only make sure to make it once, so it has to be what? It has to be high or low quality? High. It always make sure that quality is a focus. There's no room because there's no inventory to go to and say, oh, I made a mistake, get from inventory. There's nothing like that. Okay? So quality is very important. Okay? So basically there's no inventory and focus is on so if it's quality you want, what happens? If it's quality you want, you make sure your processes, okay, you focus on your processes, making sure that every process works. So if there is a bottleneck, therefore there is something that probably must be going on wrong. Okay? So that's why they need to make sure that the constraints would not be there. Alright, so throughput. Okay? Throughput contribution is different from the marginal contribution. Do you agree with me? Is it agree, correct? Okay? Actually, they call it throughput contribution. Let me explain to you. Okay? The throughput contribution is different from the marginal costing contribution. Why? Let's talk about marginal costing. How do you calculate marginal costing contribution? Can you tell me? Sales less what? All variable costs. And what are we talking about here? Direct material, direct labor, variable overhead, and other variable expenses, correct? What do we get? We get contribution. Okay, so this is what you get in marginal costing. Alright? What happens in throughput contribution? What about throughput contribution? What is it all about? You start with sales, agree, less what? Only direct materials, correct? That is the only one considered to be variable, correct? Throughput, they call it throughput contribution. Yes. Understand? That is how throughput is. Okay? What is the whole idea? The whole idea is that, okay, number one, the idea is, okay, what is the concept behind this? The concept is Number one, all costs are what? All costs, okay, in the short term, is what? Are considered fixed, except for one thing. Okay, except for materials. Is that correct? Yeah, that's why materials is considered variable, yes? Okay, everything else is fixed. Okay. And what else, the concept here? What you make as sales is actually equal to your profit. Okay? Now, and also here, the concept is, if there is no demand, remember what I say about JIT? No, what do you say? Will you produce if there's no demand? No. If there's no demand, there is no contribution. Okay? So, in throughput accounting, there were 3 calculations that we needed to do. Do you remember? What were the 3 calculations? There were 3 things that you needed to do. Tell me, what are they? Okay, first one. First is, of course, you know the throughput. Okay? Therefore, you need to know throughput per what? Per factory hour. Or per constraint, correct? So throughput here was the return. So what is the formula for this particular? Okay, so first you get the throughput. Because remember, the first thing is throughput, right? Sales less what? Direct materials. Divided by what? Actually, you can actually put selling price, correct? Less direct material cost. Divided by? Okay, divided by is your bottleneck hour per unit. So if the machine is the bottleneck, you divide by how long does it take to make this product in that particular machine. Okay? Right. So if it's machine hour, it's machine hour per unit. Okay. Next formula. So you have first formula. First. Second. What is the second? Okay, so the second is your factory cost, correct? Okay, so factory cost per bottleneck resource. Okay, so what do you do? What costs do you include in the factory cost? Okay, total labor cost plus what? Plus all fixed cost. You remember? Everything. You have to add the labor cost. Why? Because labor is considered as fixed. Divided by what? Total bottleneck hours. Third. What is the third? Third is TPAR. What does it mean? Throughput accounting ratio. Formula is your number 1 divided by your number 2. Correct? Yes? And what is the result of the TPAR? What is considered good or bad? Results. Okay, results mean, let's see. If it's greater than 1, means what? Good. Yeah, it means that this product is making profit. You understand? In the concept of throughput, if the result is less than 1, correct? Is equal to, alright?
Got that? Okay. So, if that's the case, how do we improve PPAR? How to improve? You remember? We talked about this? Okay, give me some. Number one, what should we do? Increase what? Okay, increase selling price. Good. Next one. Reduce, decrease what? Reduce material cost. Correct. Yeah? So, you want to include throughput, so look at that. Increase your selling price, decrease your cost, it would improve that, it would improve this, correct? Okay. Alright, next one. Is there anything else? Decrease what? So, okay, so, reduce what, sorry? Okay, so, yes, reduce conversion cost. What are you talking about here? Yeah, labor and fixed costs are conversion costs. Yes, overhead costs. Anything else you think we can do? How about the bottleneck, the efficiency? Improve, what you call? Improve efficiency, especially you focus on what? In the bottleneck area, correct? Very good. Good. Agree? Okay, so now, I gave you a homework yesterday to look into young company, yes? What was letter A requirement? It says, identify the bottleneck process. Okay. So which means, if the question in the exam is asking you, what is the bottleneck process? Which one? Yesterday, I don't have. You have the Google Classroom? Okay, you put inside there. It's in there. I don't have the print. Only yesterday. Oh, then this one is yours. You need. Wait a minute. Hold on. If you're here not yesterday, this was the answer, but the question in the Google Classroom. Exercise. This one. I don't have a copy anymore. Sorry. In the meantime, go to the Google Classroom. Okay. Alright, now, okay, so I will put it on the screen as well. Do you have the computer? Okay. No. That's for later. Oops, where is my notes? Sorry guys, one second. Let's see. Alright, so what did it say? It says you need to identify the bottleneck process and briefly explain why. Now, if you read the problem, what does this company make? What do they make? Okay, so this they make what? Metal sheets, and they use it, okay, they make it into product A, B, and C. How many processes it says? 3, pressing, stretching, and rolling. So product A goes through the 3 process, product B goes to the 3 process, and product C goes to the 3 process. Okay. Now, there are 50 production lines. Okay, so if you imagine, okay, so every time you see a problem in the question in the exam, in other words, there are what? There are 50 of these. Okay? There are 50 production lines. So it starts with what? is divided into 3 processes. Do you understand? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 50. Correct? So each production line starts with the first process. And what is the first process? Okay, the first process is pressing. The second process, stretching. The third process, rolling. So the materials come in the first part of every production and it starts, correct? Okay. And each product goes through each production process. Now, the results of this is that processing time per meter in hours for every process of each product. Okay, so this one is what? 0.5 on 1 hour, correct? Product A takes 0.5 of an hour in pressing, 0.25 in stretching, etc. So the first requirement is identify the bottleneck process and briefly explain why you describe as bottleneck. Can you look? Remember, you're supposed to identify, is it pressing the problem, the stretching the problem, or the rolling? And tell me why you chose. Which one? Why do you say it is pressing? Okay? She says pressing is the bottleneck. Do you agree? Yes? Do you see that? In all of the product, the pressing process takes the longest time. Yes? Which means it will delay the forwarding of the finished product to the next process. Do you understand? It has to be pressed first before it gets to the stretching. But the pressing takes a long time. So the delay is in the pressing process. Do you understand? So if you were to describe it, then you have to describe in the way that you chose it. How did you choose it? It's because of the time it takes to what? To make every product. For each product, it is the pressing process that takes longer, okay? That takes the longer time. You got that? That's the one. But, so what we're going to do is letter B. Letter B is the one that is exciting. You see, letter A, how many marks was it? 3 marks. Because it's a very short answer, right? Okay. But it says identify and briefly explain. Okay, so the briefly explain, okay, you have 1 sentence to identify. Okay, don't just say identify, just say pressing. Okay, you have to say the pressing process is the one that is the bottleneck. Then briefly explain why. How many sentences? Maximum 3. Then go to the next question. Got that? Okay, next question. Calculate the throughput accounting ratio, okay, for each product, assuming that the bottleneck process is fully utilized. Alright? 8 marks. So, TPAR means I need to calculate, before I go to TPAR, 2 formulas, correct? Alright? Now, following our discussion earlier, I need you to go to make 3 columns, correct? Product A, product B, and product C. Can you do that very quickly? If you have the computer, do it in Excel. Okay? If you don't have, do it on your paper. And you calculate for me 3 things. Throughput per bottleneck resource, factory cost, because remember, does it tell us the cost of the material? Yes or no? Yes. Does it tell us the cost of labor? Yes. Does it give us the cost of other expenses? Yes. Does it give it per product? What do you need? You need selling price per product. Look for it. Is it there? Yes. Do you have the material of the product? Yes. You need that, right? That's the first step. Do you have the bottleneck resource per unit? Bottleneck hour per unit? What is it? It's there. Okay, it's in that table. You're right. Very good. So it's in the top. Right? Okay, go. Let me see if you're doing it correctly. Great. Are we on the same page so far? Yes. Contributions. No, which means whatever you sell, okay, will be, whatever you, of course, less the cost means it will be equal to whatever is balanced with the profit. You understand? If your TPAR is about 1. So if your TPAR of a product is about 1, for sure you have profit. If you sell. It's not equal in number. It means that it will come out to be a profit. For sure you have a profit, but not equal in number. It means that if you sell, there will be a profit that will come out. But not, of course, not the same amount. It's not 100 sales and 100 profit. It means that I think it should be an arrow, not an equal sum. I will make a correction. first line, which is what is this actually? This is my throughput, isn't it? What did we say in our review? It is called a throughput contribution. Is that correct? Yes? So, now we have to identify the bottleneck. And what did you identify? It is the pressing. So, which means, what will you put here? How long does it take for each product in pressing? This one is 0.5 per hour, correct? This one? Point what? 0.5 also. How about product B? Product C. Product C takes 0.4, right? So, your first equation would be what? What we call it? Throughput per bottleneck, correct? Is that correct? So, it's correct. Throughput, which is this, per means divide, correct? Okay. Your bottleneck. So, this is your throughput per bottleneck resource. Agree? Yes. So, if I had the Excel spreadsheet, all I need to do is copy this formula. You see? Got that? Okay. So you have throughput per bottleneck resource. Second formula is what? What is supposed to do? Your factory cost per, or your factory cost per hour. Question: what is our factory cost? Okay, so the first one is we have what? We have the fixed costs. How much is your fixed cost? Fixed cost is 18 million. Okay, is there anything else we need to add to the fixed cost? What is the fixed cost? What else is the factory cost aside from the fixed cost? Labor. Okay, tell me about labor. How should I calculate this? How many labor hours? Okay, where will I look for it? Can you look for it? Can you tell me? I'll give a prize to the person who can identify what I'm looking for. How do I know how many labor hours this factory will have to pay for? Where? Down the line. Switch down the line. Okay? What does it say in this slide here? On average, 1 hour of labor is needed for each of the 225,000 hours of factory time. Now, it's good they gave you the factory time. But if they did not give us the total factory time, how do I know how many hours this factory is running? If this line was not given, it just says 1 hour of labor is needed for each factory time. They did not give you that. Can you tell me how will I calculate that? Yes, tell me how. Tell me. Very good. Let me show you here. How does it help me? Okay. Maybe I put it in the Excel so you can read, you can see it. Okay. I'll put it in the next sheet over here so you can see. How will I know? Anybody? Please let me know.
Number of staff multiplied by number of working hours.
Okay, total factory time. Okay, total factory time. Tell me. Again. Repeat, because I was not listening. Sorry.
Total worker multiplied by working hours.
Okay, does it give us the workers? No. What does it give us? Okay, so they have how many production lines, you said? 3? Listen, I will ask the question again. How many hours is the production line? How many production line they have? They have 50 production lines, correct? Remember, it is working at the same time, right? Then, how many hours does it work in a day? 18 hours in a day. Very good. How many days in a week? So, are you looking where you're supposed to look? Yes? How many weeks? 2 weeks only? In a year? In a year?
52 a year.
Wait a minute, is it 52, 50 or 48? Make up your mind. How many weeks in a year? How many weeks is on holiday? Oh, therefore? 50. Oh, okay, alright, so 50 weeks. Okay, now, does that equal to 225,000 hours per year? Yes? You understand now? Now, it's very nice. Sorry. It's very nice that this examiner wrote it down. 1 labor hour per 225,000 factory time. Perfect. If they don't, you know how to calculate it. Yes? Okay? Because it is important, because you need to know your labor cost. So, now, let's go back. Labor cost, therefore, is what? Oh, how much do you pay for labor? Okay, $10 per hour. And how many hours did we say? How many hours? 5,000 hours. Because 1 labor hour per 1 factory time. Now, of course, it will not be always 1. You understand? It can become 2. So you have to read the problem, correct? Okay? You understand, everybody? Okay, so it may not be always 1 hour per factory time. You need to read the problem. Okay? So how much is this? How much is this? 2,250,000. Which means your total factory cost is what? What is your total? 20,250,000. Okay, I don't worry about format. So which means, now tell me, what then is the factory cost per hour? What should I do? What should I do? What should it be? It's going to be 20,250,000 divided by what? How many factory hours? 225,000. Yes? And it's all the same. It's not different for each product. Yes? It's all the same. How did we get to 90? Just for your notes at home. It's what? How did we get there again? It's 2250 divided by 25,000 equals 90. Excellent. I love it. Okay? It's okay. Oh, it's over. Okay, got that? Now, we have number 1, we have number 2, then what do we do now? Number 3 is what? Number 3 is TPAR, correct? What would you do if you were doing an Excel? Equals what? Number 1, which is this, agree? Divided by number 2, which is this. Everybody agree? Yes? Okay? Clear? So, what would be the result? So what happens here now is, alright, so, by the way, should the examiner say that it is 2 decimal places, you have to do 2 decimal places, correct? Okay? So, all you need to do is adjust. Sorry. Oh, sorry, it doesn't allow. Yes? All right? Clear? Does it tell you to explain? Does it tell you to explain? In any part of the requirement, I go back to the requirement because I've done a lot of calculation. I don't know now if I have completed all the requirements. Go back to the requirement. Does it want to explain? Okay, no, it does not. Yes? It does not tell you, it just tells you to calculate. And it's 8 marks, which means you will need to show how you done it, the detail on the screen. Okay? Now, ready? What is letter C? What is letter C saying of the problem? Okay, so letter C, it says assuming the TPAR of product C is less than 1. Is that correct? Is TPAR of product C less than 1? Yes, which means it's already making a loss. This product, you know when you sell it, it's going to make a loss. Remember? This is the concept of throughput. Anything less than 1 makes a loss. But the question here is that it's requiring you to explain how the company is to improve. You remember what you said? Yes. How many marks? 4 marks. Okay, you understand? Okay. So, I don't have to repeat that. We talked about that earlier. But what is interesting is if you look at number 2 of letter C, it's also 5 marks. It says, briefly discuss whether this supports the suggestion to cease. What is to cease? To stop the production of product C. What do you think? Should they discontinue immediately? Or no? Is there any factors that you need to consider before you discontinue anything? Yeah, so you try to improve first, correct? Yeah. Correct. Which is what you have to answer in number 1. You try to improve all that, right? Okay. But one other thing that you need to also include is it's asking you, do you just discontinue? Okay. Are there any, is discontinuing only because it's not making money, discontinue immediately? What should you consider before you discontinue anything? Give me one. Tell me about labor. What about it? Correct. So if you're ready to discontinue, you have laborers who will become idle. Are you ready to put them in another job? Okay. But it's not easy to say fire them because some of these big companies have union contracts. You understand? They have contracts that you cannot just fire because you decided to discontinue something. You got that? And when you fire somebody like that, you have to pay a lot of redundancy and all that. So there's additional cost. Plus, in the economic environment, it's not good to see that you're starting to fire. What does it mean if you start to fire for the company? Your competitors will be happy. They will celebrate, isn't it? Okay? But don't write it in your answer. Your competitor will celebrate. But you know what I mean. Yeah? They will still not thinking that you are now not making money. Yes? They say, oh, we start getting their clients already because these people are going down. Okay? Very soon. Second, your other employees what? Discouraged, right? Demotivated. They will be motivated and say, oh, when is our turn? You understand? So it will be affecting morale. Yes? Okay? Affecting morale. Plus, don't forget, give me one more. Anybody has an idea? Sometimes if you have more than one product, there's a relationship. Do you understand? Sometimes companies come to you to buy product A and B because you have product C. You understand? If I want to buy something, for example, I'm a construction company, I go to your shop to buy stuff. So I go to you, I want to know if I can buy tiles and wood and roof. So I want one time. But if you don't have product C, maybe I look for another company that will give me everything in one purchase. Do you understand? So if you discontinue product C, it may affect your sales of product A and product B. Because now your customers will actually go somewhere else where they can have a one-stop shop. You understand one-stop shop? Yes? So this is what they're asking you. That's why they give you 5 marks for that. Because there's a lot of things you can talk about. There's a lot of things you can talk about. Plus, there's one more. You know that products give out contribution, correct? Contribution is supposed to pay the fixed cost. You discontinue one, where will you get the contribution to pay? The electricity, the rent. Do you understand? It may not make profit, but it gives you positive contribution. Alright, so where will you get the money to pay for the other fixed costs? Makes sense, eh? So, imagine all that. You have already, how many marks is this problem?
6.
Only 6? 20. Imagine, you only need 30 marks to pass this exam. If you get all that correct. Yes?
Alright, any questions on this? Any questions? Easy, isn't it? Easy peasy. Alright. Here is what I was just talking all about. Alright, so this is the answer to that TPAR story. Alright, here we go. Okay. Then we go to life cycle costing. Don't worry, I'll send this to you in your Google Classroom. Any questions? Okay, now I'm distributing chapter 2C. Okay? Can you get for your rows? Get for your rows. Okay, life cycle costing, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, in this particular chapter, okay, we look at product life cycle. Why is it advantageous to cost out the entire life of a product? Okay, and how does it affect the product costing? Okay, so first, you need to be able to identify these different stages. In other words, you need to remember them. Okay? And you need to be able to know what would be the life cycle costs in manufacturing and service industries. And we need to look at the benefits of using life cycle costing. Okay? Right? So, life cycle costing is the third specialist cost accounting technique that we should consider. Okay? Now, why? What was the other two? What was the other two? This one is your third. What is the other two? This is your third. What was the first and the second? Okay? First is what we talked about. Correct? Second is what? Okay? Cost accounting technique. Another one we talked about is what? Throughput accounting. So third is life cycle costing. Okay, I'll just do an introduction, then we can have a break in a moment. Right? Alright, so life cycle costing means that in this process, you accumulate cost over the entire life of the product. Which means, if I am able to cost out the entire life of the product, what is the cost? I should also know how much sales I will make. It will then give me the total profitability of the product. Okay? Is it important, you think? Why? Why would I like to know the entire cost of the life, okay, and how much profit I want? I will get if I, from the beginning until the end. Why is it important? Correct. Exactly, well said. You put your money in a business because you want profit. So if you're going to invest to sell a product and at the end of it, you finally end everything, you are making a loss, would you even start it? This is the thing. Okay? That is why life cycle costing actually came about. Okay? So, in the exam, what are they going to ask you to do? Number one, they will ask you to calculate costs at the different stages and show overall profitability. Okay? Right? So you need to be able to do that. And you can also be required, okay? They could ask you to identify from a question and a scenario at which stage the product is in. Okay? And then they'll ask you to give the benefits of a life cycle costing. Okay? Right. So, what is this entire life? How many stages do we have? 5 stages. Development, introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. Decline includes discontinuance. Correct? Okay. So that is your life cycle of a product. Okay? So, at each stage, is there costs? What is the cost at the development stage? What are costs at the development stage? Number one, R&D. Correct. Most of it is R&D. Research and development. Okay, so at that point, do you see what happened? Is it a profit or a loss? It's a loss because it's all cost. There is no sales yet. Then the next stage would be introduction. What are the costs in introduction stage? First, you need to, do you advertise immediately? Not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet.
When you see the raw material, data, whatever, that you provide.
Yeah, so you need to buy those first because you need to make your first few products, correct? What else do you need to do at this stage? Should you train people? You have to train your production team. You need to train your selling team. Yeah, you don't go and launch immediately and everybody says, what's the product all about? And nobody can answer. Yes? You understand? Then, after you do all that, you have to launch. Yes? Do you have expenses when you launch a product? Yes. Yeah, it depends how big the launch you want to have, right? Okay. So you have to launch, you probably need giveaways and all that, etc. So those are called introduction. Oh, by the way, at this stage then, when you're growing, many expenses now, right? You now have full production facility, full production cost, right? Do you have selling and distribution and marketing costs at this stage? A lot. But if you look at your profit, what's happening now? It's going up, yes? Because your sales is going up, right? Okay. So that's how it works. Then what happens? It reaches maturity. Okay? You maximize the sale that you can actually have. So why does product come to a decline? What is the reason why a product declines? Okay, maybe you decline your sales because you cannot produce anymore. Maybe you are limited in terms of your materials, heavy, right? Or labor, okay? Or really demand. Demand can be in a decline. Yes? Why could be decline? Why does demand decline? What is the reason why demand declines? Compete, you said? So there are competitors now in the market, correct? Maybe the first time it was only you. Now more are coming out with the same product. Any other reason why your product is in a decline? Yeah, there's no development. So people say, it's old technology. Yeah. It's getting to be obsolete, correct? Okay. Or somebody came up with a better product. Or you yourself released a newer version. Correct? When the new iPhone came, what happened to the sales of the older version? It still sells because, like me, I buy the old version, not the new version. Yeah, it's cheaper. By the time I'm waiting until they release the new one, then I buy the other one. Yeah? Why would I buy the more expensive one? Wait. They release the new one because they will release in less than 1 year and a half. Yes, just wait 1 year and a half with your old phone. Then go with the later one. You understand? So there is still sales, but not too much. Yes. Okay. All right. Decline. By the way, in the decline, when you discontinue, do you have additional costs? There's still costs, but there's newer costs. For example, you have to discontinue a machine. Yes. you need to throw away certain machine. You have to, what do you call this? Sometimes you need to bury it because it's not supposed to be, they have, you decommission a machine. Okay? So things like that. Alright? Good. Now, so again, let's repeat. Development stage, the cost would be research and development. Introduction would be high fixed cost because now, what did you say? Buy machinery, correct? To make more of it, etc. By the time I introduce, I need to manufacture a lot. So probably I need to build factories here. Okay. Growth, of course, now will be increase in variable cost because you produce more, you need more materials, you need more labor, correct? You need to train more salesmen, so it increases. Maturity, it will be more variable cost. Decline is variable cost. Okay? So, question. How do I maximize my profit, yes, over the product life cycle? How? 1. Reduce your design costs. Correct? Okay? So if you can reduce your design costs, that's good. Minimize time to market. What does it mean? Yes, release faster. Release before your competitors releases theirs. Okay? Because if your competitor go before you, the market is already saturated. You will not be able to sell. Okay? It's very rare that a person has an iPhone at the same time having a Galaxy Note. Yes? Minimize break-even time. What does that mean? Yes, so which means if I want that to be break-even immediately, what should I do?
You can't have a problem.
Yes, so how do I get that? How do I make sure that I get the break-even fast? I need to sell at a what? Higher selling price or lower? Higher. Isn't that what iPhone does? iPhone will sell at the highest possible price when they release the product. Because they need to get back the money back so that they break even, so they can put the money back into research. Because they know that the life of the product is very short. Why did they know that? Because they are the ones who control it. They control the release of the next version, isn't it? Yes. They release to you iPhone XS. They already know what is the next. Okay? They already know what is the next to release. And they know when. So they need to maximize. Yes? At the end of the day, they are still a business entity. Maximize the length of the lifespan. How? How do I maximize the length of the lifespan? How do I make sure that my product does not decline immediately?
Still popular.
Yeah, make it still popular, correct. So, okay, so marketing is an issue, correct? Anything else? Maybe find another use, you understand? Introduce, don't think about iPhone, there's no other use of the iPhone. Okay? Any other product, find another way that they can use the product for something else. You understand? Okay? So instead of, for example, you're selling oil, yeah, cooking oil. Then you're going to say, now we discovered that this cooking oil is good for your skin. Okay, so now you extended it because the use is extended. Right? You understand? I'm just trying to, okay? The other thing, you expand the life by finding new geographical markets. Agree? You cannot sell iPhone 7 in the US because you have iPhone XS, right? Go to Timbuktu. Where's Timbuktu? You don't even know where Timbuktu is. I'm not making up. This is a place in Africa. You understand? Now, you in the US, iPhone 7, nobody will buy, correct? go to Timbuktu. Oh, that is the best since sliced bread. You understand? Okay, I'm not making fun of Africa, but I'm trying to show you that there is a new geographical market. Okay? They did not like the big SUV in the US because remember at some time, not now, because now they're very rich in oil. Long time ago, the gasoline was very expensive, correct? I don't know if you remember that. Gasoline was very expensive, and all of them, they did not like their big cars. You know, they like big cars, these Americans. Okay? So now they replace their big cars with a smaller Toyota and stuff like that because it's fuel efficient. Now, these big companies, they did not discontinue their big SUVs because they have other countries that actually like these big cars. The Middle East like these big cars. Africa like big cars. Asia like big cars, correct? Okay? Not only you here, Philippines too. Okay? They like big cars. Even their roads are small, but they like big cars. Even if the poor people are small, you know, we are not very tall, isn't it? Yeah? But our cars are big. So when you see a big car driving on the road, you cannot see the driver. Yeah, but there's moving, isn't it? Okay? So it's like this. So expand, okay, your geographical markets. Okay? So if you have a product that has a shorter product life, remember, okay, there's a need to be able to plan properly. Okay? So you need to actually, right, make sure that you reach your market fast because you have a very short life cycle. Okay? Right? So you need to be able to get the return fast. So, looking at that, if I'm looking at life cycle costing, it will give me a better view of what happens to my product. We discussed that earlier. Okay? What is the cost over the life? Okay? And therefore, if I know that, I will be able to know how much profit I make for the product I sell. Okay? Now, also, okay, it will give me, with the product life cycle, I can monitor the results on a yearly basis. What's happening as against my prediction on the life of this product. Okay? And if I know my product life cycle, I know how to maximize return within that product life cycle. Okay? Remember, I would like to reduce the cost as much as possible because I want to improve profitability. Okay? Modern products have very short life cycle because more products nowadays are very much electronic in nature, correct? And technology changes very fast. Okay? And the more important, we need to know about product life cycles. Okay? Alright, so implications of life cycle costing? How would you forecast that far? Okay? How would you know what would be the actual expenses? Okay? Even if it's a short life cycle, it is intimidating to actually look and see and cover and make sure you have all the costs in terms of the entire life of the product. It's not easy. In paper, yes. In actual reality, nightmare. Okay? Nightmare. Okay? And also, remember, even if you calculate profitability in advance, you will have encountered changes in price. Especially if you want the demand to increase. So you need to adjust your price, correct? What happens then? What gets affected? If you adjust your price? Profit, correct? So your profit now will not match according to your budgeted profit. Alright, so you assess profitability over the life and not by period. So you need to keep updating it in terms of the entire life. Okay? Alright, so when you can come back from the break, we'll take a look at an example, okay, on how the product life cycle actually works, okay? So, take a break. And I'll see you in 15 minutes. 15, huh? 15. Which is this one? Just, I didn't get it. The one from just now? Anybody else missing anything? Hi, can you make me an extra copy of chapter 2D? Answer. Answer, okay. Is throughput. Yes. Okay, so you're taking the question. Yes. I cannot pick out, but the one that purchase sales instead. Actually, purchase is together with I don't know. I cannot. I'm just looking at the more common. But I don't know which system they will use, but what I'm telling you is the more common ones. Gosh, yes, you know, the results. Can you give the which one there?
All of them.
The one on the right side. All right, I think everybody's back. Can we start? Yes? Okay, good. Now, remember, in life cycles costing, we need to learn how to put together the costs in the entire life, correct? Okay. So you need to look for, what are you going to look for? Because it says here, calculate the profitability. Okay, so you need to know the sales. You need to know the costs. What else do you need to know? Do you need to know how many units in each stage? Yes, you need to know that, right? Okay. Did I give you the answer or did I ask you to calculate? Oh, I asked you to calculate. Okay. All right. So, this company is a high-tech company. They had to spend 500,000 in designing and developing. So, is that cost relevant for us? Yes, okay. 18-month life cycle. What did I tell you? 1.5 months, 1.5 years normally, correct? Okay. Before a new product is released. So, these are the sales volume for the next stages. These are the selling price, the overheads. Please, can you calculate the profitability of these new products in the entire life? Can you do that? I think I have something there. Okay, or you can use your computer. Okay, so the format of the answer is on the next page. But you can use either the paper or you can use the spreadsheet to work. Can you work on the profitability, please? And let's compare later. Can you go to your Excel spreadsheet if you have your computer? Faster actually. Correct? Or, if you don't have, you can use manually. You want help on the format? Format for the lecture.
Không, đây là cách không phải là vì
it's for you.
So far, what's your total revenue? Total revenue is revenue. Sales, total sales. 24,297,000, correct? Which means your total profitability would be what? Have you finished that yet? Not yet. Okay. 9 million? 7? Any other has a different profitability? 9 million? 200 and? There's something wrong somewhere, correct? There. Yes? 9,250,000. There's some multiplication somewhere. You forgot. You forgot that development costs, yes? Okay, don't forget that it was in the paragraph. That's why it's easy to forget. Huh? Okay. It's easy to forget. Good, good. So this is, all right, this is your profitability for this particular life cycle. All right, so don't worry. Okay, let me put it in here. So you will get the same when you get this OneNote. So let's put it all together. So if you look at profitability, okay. All right, there you are. You'll receive it later on. Okay? Now, how about service industry? Is there a life cycle to a service industry? You sure? Let's take a look. Aha. The only thing that is not present would be what? Research and development. It will not exist in a service industry, right? Okay. The impact will be lesser. But, okay, however, there is still the costing of the entire life of the service. Okay? Right? So, what needs to be made sure is to minimize cost. Example of a service industry would be projects. Okay? It could be life cycle of a customer. A person has a life cycle for sure, correct? But I'm talking about the life cycle of a person being your customer. So if you're providing that service, okay, so you need to be able to cost out the life cycle, okay? So again, projects also has a life cycle, okay? Projects also have life cycles. Okay, question number 1. Okay, I have a multiple choice question for you. Okay, ready? All right. Which of the following would arise in relation to production of a new product? Okay. In calculating the life cycle cost of the product, which of the above items would be excluded? Above are research and development. Which one should be excluded? So, A, B, C, or D? So, which one would you remove from there?
C.
C? 4 and 5? Answer? Excluded, huh? Answer? Oh, sorry. D. None of the above. It's a trick question, no? Remember, the question is, in calculating the lifetime cost, which one would you exclude? So, of course, none of them. Remember, we include everything. Okay? Everything. All right. Next question, which is coming from the exam paper or specimen paper. Which of the following statements regarding life cycle costing are correct? Which means there's more than one. Are correct. Okay, so it's either A, B, or C, or mostly A and C, correct? Alright, what's the answer? C. Alright? Life cycle cost does not include any opportunity cost. Did you hear me talk about opportunity cost? No, it's not a decision-making technique. The last point, number 4, is not correct. Which is the one that has a spike? Okay, growth demand. Is it maturity or growth? Growth, not maturity. So number 4. Okay, number 4. Sorry. Yeah, so a life is characterized by a rapid increase in demand. Okay, so yes. Okay, now letter C is 1. Okay, 1. What did I just tell you just a minute before this slide? I said even the organization's customer has a life cycle. Okay, in terms of as a customer. Yes? That is why companies, they have this, airlines have these airlines and shopping malls, they have these cards. What do you call it? Membership, like loyalty, like point cards, yes? Okay? Even this Amazon, I don't know, Starbucks, they have these point cards, and then it makes you what? It makes you come back, and come back, and come back. They're trying to prolong you as a customer. You understand? The loyalty index. Okay, in that sense, of course, as a customer person, you have a life cycle. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. Okay? Okay? Okay, so good. All right. Now, to summarize, remember, in life cycle costing, what does it say? All costs and revenues throughout the life is supposed to be considered. Remember the 5 stages, please. Okay. And look at the advantages. Okay. The 2 more prominent advantages is that it gives you if a product is going to be successful at the end of the day or it will fail. And it will tell you at which point you need to maximize profit. Okay? Right? And of course, in service industries, yes, you need still to calculate life cycle cost, except you will not probably have any R&D stages. Okay? Right. Okay. Where would you look at some of the questions that ask about life cycle costing? In your revision kits, you can look at the mock exams, or you can find it there. You find in ACCA Global for these exams that will give you an idea the way the examiner has asked the question. All right? Okay. So clear? Question.
One question. How do we determine the period of the life cycle of one product?
Excellent question. Not you. Definitely not you as an accountant. You understand? You say, how do I know? Not you. This calculation, yes, you need to know how to calculate. But our information, you have to get it from the production manager, the marketing manager. It's not you, just an accountant, who will decide this. Okay? Because you probably will not know when it started, the engineers. It's a group of people who actually sit together to determine all about it. Okay? And then you, as an accountant, will be asked to put the numbers together. But all our information comes from many people.
Sure, but I just want to know that for example, in the example, it just take month. For example, they will calculate from the date of searching until the date of selling product, until the product stops.
Yeah, until it's discontinued.
Until
It's discontinued. The product is discontinued.
for example, it's one iPhone 7.
Yes.
In fact, it's not there, but still
Producing and selling. Still in the decline.
the line is
Yes.
still.
Where discontinued? The life is discontinued, except that the sales have declined. Now when it stops, it's discontinued.
So how can we calculate it?
Not you. The one who is in the marketing, yes, that is an estimate that they need to know. That they need to know. Because they, the other people in the organization, will know when do they expect to stop it. Of course, that's why it's a group of people who will have to decide when to stop it because they know at what point the cost will be over than the sales. Because if the sales keep declining, eventually your production cost will be more than your sales. So you have to stop because it's no longer breaking even. It's contributing to your loss.
So we have to design synergy.
Yes. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is the costing method that everyone in the company, especially the marketing, dread. They hate this. Because the main thing that they hate about this is that how exactly the same question you asking me. How long? Okay? How long? And the manager, because they come to the door of the CEO and say, listen, sir, we're going to launch this product. The only one question the manager will ask, what's the profit at the end? If they don't have that, they have to go out because the manager won't spend time to listen about the product if at the end of the day, it's going to give a loss. So we have to group together and estimate that. The best way possible. Now, if the life extended without additional cost, well and good. Okay? If it still gives profit, why discontinue something that gives profit? But when it starts to give you loss, stop. That's when. But it's not just the accountant. Huh? The accountant is not Superman. Okay? Doesn't know everything. So you get people to come and actually contribute. But the whole idea, the accountant is there because the accountant will be the one pushing and telling them, so when do you want? I need this information. I need this information. So you can put together the post. Yeah? Clear? All right? Any other question here? Cool. All right. Yes. Sorry.
What is the benefit of showing the life cycle in the problem? Because when they show the life cycle, they get it back, but they do not listen to us.
Okay. Yes. You would have to verify, because why every cycle? Because you will need to see the sales and the corresponding expenses in each cycle. Okay? So you will be able to determine if something is missing as an accountant. Okay? You understand? So you will be able to prompt them, listen, you're saying this is growth, but where is your machinery here? You understand? So you have to understand so that you can interact with them when they tell you, oh, these are the expenses for this stage. But then you have to tell them, but there's something missing. How about this? How about that? Where is the cost of this? That's just why.
So it's been allocated cost by
That's the stage. Because the stage will give you an indicator of what possible expenses would be on that stage. You understand? But the volume of what is to be sold on every stage, that's what marketing will have to tell you. You understand? How about the production cost? That will be the production manager to advise you based on forecast and all that. Yeah? Any other question? Okay, so good. But don't worry in terms of the exam. Of course, it will be on paper. Yeah, all you need to do is to know how to actually address it. Okay. One more. Wait. I have something for you. I always have something for you, isn't it? Okay. I have a homework for you. Ay, you don't like homework, huh? Ay, Okay, look at this first. There are two parts to this homework. I don't like homework because you don't like it. And you don't do it. We have a problem, huh? Okay, wait. Alright, so everybody's a copy? So two parts here. The first part is about life cycle costing. And what I was supposed to tell you, ask you to do. You're required to determine the life cycle cost. Remember, they want to price at different prices. You see here? Yeah? And they have the annual sales at these prices. The question is, what is the cost at each pricing? So every price, what's the cost? And for every price, what would be the profit? And we need to give a recommendation, which price gives the highest profitability. You understand? Okay. So you read the problem because at every price, there's a change in a bit of the cost. Yes? Okay. So, therefore, what are you going to show me? You have to show me 3 different profitabilities for 3 different prices. Okay? Got that? And here, the second one, we will answer this when we talk about the next chapter. Okay? Chapter 2E. The last chapter of our discussion. So far, if we look at the agenda today, alright, so we have, we've looked at the mind map, we look at the homework, we look at life cycle costing. I have given you a homework for life cycle costing, alright, which you need to work on. I suggest you use your Excel spreadsheets, okay, when you get home if you don't have it here. So now let's talk about environmental management accounting. Okay? So, here is 2 things for you today. The slides, and I'm giving you the technical paper. Because if you read the chapter 2E, it's very long in the textbook. Have you accessed your ebooks already? Yeah. Already? Okay, so you have to look at your ebooks, correct? Okay? So, this technical paper highlights the main information that you need to remember about environmental management accounting, written by the examiner person. Okay? It's very good. So, first, thank you very much, please. Okay, here's your technical paper. Alright. I'm giving you enough materials until our next meeting. When is our next meeting? February 19, 16. Okay, 16, 17, yes? Okay, so I will also post the first chapter of the next area, chapter 3. Okay, I'll put it in Google Classroom so you can read it. Alright? Please read your technical paper and your textbook. Okay? Read it in advance. Alright, so while you're doing that, let me put in the screen our lecture. Okay? Ready? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, listen up. Okay? It's a very interesting topic, this one, because it's something very, very applicable to our lives today. Okay? Environmental issues, right? Now, this is a very new topic because nowadays companies have to adhere to the many environmental standards by law. Okay? Some countries require them to submit costs, expenses, results of operation in relation to environmental issues. Okay? Whether how they throw their garbage, how they throw their water, how they emit gas into the air. Okay? So, as accountants, we evolved in terms of our approach. Okay? And one evolution is actually helping companies as accountants to monitor costs that are related or driven by environmental issues. Okay? Hence, we come out with environmental management accounting. So let us look at what is the principles behind this and define what would be considered as environmental costs when we're doing our management accounting processes. Okay? And what do we do with them? How do we account for them? Okay? So, again, we will look at the issues that the management face in these different environmental costs. How do businesses ensure that they actually account for these environment costs? And what are these type of costs? Okay? Right. Now, this is still part of section A of your syllabus. As I told you, it's the last chapter of section A of the syllabus. Okay? Now, I already told you how important this is. Okay? Okay, so this is the reason I was telling you earlier. Now, so again, points that we need to remember. Number one, we need to be able to define what is this environmental cost. And number two, what accounting methods do we take into consideration on how to handle these costs? Okay, only two things. What are the costs and how to handle it? Okay, in this chapter. Now, okay. How about the exam? What kind of questions they will ask? Okay, probably, most especially, all right, it will be in either section A. What is section A of your exam? You remember what is section A of your exam? You have to know what kind of exam you're taking. Don't tell me you don't know. What is section A? Multiple choice. Remember, objective. But what happened? You have a scenario, correct? And there are 5 questions, right? Don't tell me. What's section A of the exam? Okay. You don't try to know the type of the exam only when you actually sit in the exam. You understand? You need to know. Okay. Section B is long question, but it probably will be a the short question. Yeah. In the section B, it's like a 1-line question, 3 marks. Okay, what do we call it? It's called a knowledge question or an easy mark question. You understand? Question will be only 2 things. What are the environmental costs? Or it will ask you, what would be the accounting methods to apply? Because these are the 2 main information you need to know out of this chapter. Okay? So let's begin. Alright, so I begin with what would be the typical environmental costs? Number 1, consumables. Okay? Why is it environmental related? Consumables and material costs. Because, what's an example of a consumable? Printer ink. Tell me about printer ink. The whole cartridge, right? What happens? It's made of plastic, correct? Okay. So what happens now? You have issues with actually using it and then throwing it. So what happens? You actually hurt the environment, correct? So now companies are urged to what? To actually buy more of what? of more of something that is refillable. You know refillable? Yes. Okay. Refillable. Right. So, materials. Materials. What are companies asked to do in terms of materials? Materials can be the materials making the product or packaging of the materials, correct? So, in terms of materials, people are asked to do organic thing, right? Are going to go to biodegradable products, correct? Tell me about that. How does it affect accounting? These are not cheap. Yes? Buy something organic and the cost goes up. Alright? Buy something biodegradable. Instead of plastic, use biodegradable. Talk to me about the cost. Yes? Remember, we are in management accounting, right? So we're looking at cost. So these typical environmental costs, because of the new legislation, these are extra costs that normally would not be there if the company is not adhering to environmental regulations. You understand? Okay. So these are extra costs because of environmental issues. Transport and travel. What's the relationship to environment here? Car emissions. So you need to be making sure that your cars that you buy are well maintained, correct? Yes, that they don't emit. Now, maintenance cost is free? No. Okay. Now, if your car is too old, what do you need to do? What do you mean fix? It's too old. You have to dispose of it, and you need to actually buy a more environment-friendly one. So you buy something that is partly electrical, partly gas, or electrical, correct? Electric car. But is that cheap? No, wait until Tesla comes up with a cheaper one, correct? At the moment, nobody can buy your car. Alright, so travel. Transport is one, travel is another. Okay? So again, you have to have making sure that traveling, cost of travel, okay, etc. will be reduced. Again, it affects environment. Waste and effluent disposal. Okay, what is that? Yeah, you throw everything in the river, correct? Because that is free. You don't have to pay. Yes? But if you follow the rules, especially in the UK, you cannot just throw the water the way we do it in Chow Chow. Correct? You go to the Chow Chow, one river is color green, side of the factory. The other side of the factory is color orange, depending on what clothes they're trying to make. You understand? Because they throw all the water from their production goes into the small creeks there, correct? Oh, you cannot do that in the UK. Yes? What do you need to do? You need to take your water waste, your effluent waste that is toxic, and you have to do what? You have to package it very well, cost. You have to ship it, cost. Where are you going to go? To the landfill, cost. You understand? Bury it into the landfill, cost. Then you have taxes to pay, cost. You understand now? Why is it an environmental cost? You had additional cost because you have to comply with regulations. Otherwise, your license to manufacture will not be renewed. Okay? Environmental cost. Water consumption. Of course, we know water will be of short supply if we do not use it efficiently, correct? So, companies will need to look at how they use water in their production process so that they will use less, or they could actually look at recycling the water. Do you understand? When they actually come through the machine, it's already dirty. So they have to recycle it so that the same water can be cleaned and then used again. Recycling the water, free cost. You have to have a system to clean the water. Cost. Okay? How about energy? Energy, of course. You need energy, electricity to do your manufacturing process, correct? Okay, so the more energy, the more you actually spend. So how do you actually make sure that you are able to sustain the energy requirement you have? Okay? How can you convert your waste into energy? Cost. So you have to have a machine to do that, correct? You have to have an incinerator to do that. Those are costs. And as management accountant, we need to be able to help company to distinguish what is a normal cost and what would be your additional cost because of environmental issues. Okay? We need to be able to separate it from the normal cost. Okay? So, in management, environmental management accounting, we said we have to be able to generate and analyze all this information to make sure that the management is able to make decisions on them. Okay? Using them to submit to regulatory bodies. Why is it important to know what are the environmental costs? Okay? Because I would like you to underline that word, pricing. What was I telling you all along earlier? All those things? There's one common word. Cost. Yes? Change your packaging to biodegradable. Your cost will not be affected. Means your selling price will be affected higher. Yes. You understand? So, accounting for this environmental cost will actually help companies make their pricing decision. Because if they don't consider their pricing, they actually will have lower profits because costs will increase. Yes? Make sense? Okay. I told you since earlier. We do this because we have to comply with requirements by the law. Right? Regulatory standards. And, by the way, it's not also all costs. It's not all increase in cost. For example, energy. Yes? In terms of energy, in terms of environment, we want to use more of energy or less of energy? Less. So actually, in the process of analyzing what you have, you probably will see that you can save. You understand? And you remember I told you to recycle the water from the machine? Yes? Clean it again and use it again, correct? So which means, instead of buying more water to use in the machine, you can just recycle, correct? Probably it's going to be cheaper in the long term because you recycle. Alright, so what do? We need to understand that some of these costs are clearly stated. You can clearly see it. But some of these costs are hidden in what we call general or production overheads. What does it mean hidden? If you do not change the type of your machinery, and your machinery is emitting a lot of carbon, you understand? Carbon emissions, you probably are trying to do what? You're trying to do other things. For example, you're going to change your machine, correct? Okay, to make it more environment friendly. So, if you don't separate it, you actually change your machine, your cost increase because your overhead increase because you have a new machine. Okay. And then, because you have a new machine, you need to have a new engineer to handle the new machine. Correct? Now, if you don't use EMA, you just, what happens to this cost? This cost will just hide in production overheads. Do you understand? This is normal. Depreciation is a normal expense of an engineer, correct? But in reality, this extra cost was because of environmental issues. Do you understand? Okay. So in EMA, we try to separate and say, no, this extra cost. Remember, we're analyzing. This extra cost was because of the environment. You got it? Okay? So that's what we're trying to do, to analyze the cost better and say which one actually is incurred because of environment or it's just because it's a normal course of our business. Okay? So there is, like, for example, internal cost and also external cost. Okay, so we try to have cost to prevent environmental problems, but there's external cost because we have to clean the environment. So if those factory in Cham Cham, am I saying it correctly? No. Thank God. After so many years, I say it correctly. The factory, if one day they are going to be asked by the government to clean all the rivers and creeks around them, they have to spend money, correct? Yes? Right? So that would be, for them, for the company, it's supposed to be an environmental costs. Correct? So those are the types of costs. Okay? So as accountants, because of this, that is why we're studying EMA today. Because we need to be able to identify these environmental costs. If they are hidden in production overheads, we need to separate it. We need to show management what is normal expenses and what is expenses due to environmental issues. Okay? And also remember, we would like to reduce carbon footprint. In other words, what is it? Do you understand that term? Carbon footprint to reduce the what? Okay? It's actually reduce any activity that will increase carbon emission in the environment. Because of the carbon emission, we have a greenhouse effect. What is the greenhouse effect? We don't turn green. We're not Martians. Okay? The greenhouse effect is like, a greenhouse is actually a kind of like a house, and you put your plants there. The plant's supposed to grow. Correct? Okay? So what happens in a greenhouse effect in the world, if you have so much emission, it will what? It will trap. What will get trapped? The heat. The heat gets trapped in the environment. What is that? Is it a problem? Yes. What will melt? Okay. The glaciers will melt, which means the water level will increase. You have climate change, okay, and all this stuff. Okay. So of course, you know what will happen. So what companies are asked to do is to identify carbon footprint and try to reduce them. In other words, you try to reduce carbon emission. Okay? So, example, travel. Remember I mentioned travel earlier? Okay? So, if you are to travel, because when you travel over the airplane, that's emission. If you're shipping and delivering, that's carbon emission. So, you reduce these possible emissions and travel, or find another way. So if you deliver using electric delivery vans, that will reduce your carbon emission. Good luck, if it's available. Okay? So, let's define. There are two environmental: prevention costs and detection costs, and, there's more, internal failure costs, external failure costs. Okay? So these are some examples of environmental costs. Now, how to account? This one I need you to remember these four. There are four. I'm going to put a star here. Oh, sorry. There are four accounting methods that you need to remember. And you need to remember the names. Inflow, outflow, flow cost, activity-based costing, we know that already, and life cycle costing. Okay, life cycle costing. All right. Input, output. Okay. Well, simple. What comes in must go out. Okay. However, The output is split against what is sold and what is stored and what is waste. Okay? Alright, so what do you measure here? You measure the physical quantity and monetary and focus on focus on environmental costs. So whatever you use must come out into your products and you reduce your waste. So I'll give you a graphical illustration. So if you put in material, the material that you put in can come out as a finished goods, correct? Let's say 60% of that 100% comes out as a finished good. Okay? 25% is actually scrap, normal loss. 10% is waste. But the scrap could be sold, remember? Some vendors buy your pieces of fabric, correct? But you don't need it anymore. And 5% is not accounted for because it's too small and it gets lost in the process, correct? Or gets washed out in the machine. Okay? So, what it's trying to say to you is that if you minimize the cost of your material and maximize that it goes into the product, then waste is reduced, correct? Waste is going to be reduced. You maximize the items going into your product. Check your processes so that scrap will be reduced. Okay? So what happened? It should actually reduce your cost of your material in. Okay? And you need to determine here as well, inflow and outflow, what kind of material should come in here so that you will not have any effect on the environment. Okay, example that I told you, what is it? Organic, right? Biodegradable materials, etc. Okay, so that's one way to account for environmental costs. But in inflow-outflow, we only look at materials, accounting for anything that is material related. Okay, so first. Second, flow cost accounting. We look at how materials, but we also look at the system. Where is the system going through? Because here, I told you earlier, you go through the system, correct? But not in this. Here, you just look at what material you put in and what material comes out. But in flow cost accounting, you look at what material goes in, the system where it works, and what comes out, okay, to be delivered. Okay, so in here, in flow cost, you take into account the material that is going in, and you actually look at how it comes out, and you look at as well the processes it goes through. So you analyze, okay, the cost in the production process. Third, environmental activity-based costing. Here, environment-driven costs such as increased depreciation, higher staff wages. Okay? So these are environment-driven costs. You remember why high depreciation? You remember the machine that we have to buy new? Okay, what happens? It's higher depreciation. You have to hire the new engineer, so higher staff. What did I say? It's normally hidden in the overheads. But here, we need to separate it because we know that it is an additional cost because of environmental issues. Because if it was not because of environment, they will not hire that new guy, they will not buy that new machine. You understand? Okay. So, you have to separate it. But there are also environment-related costs. Different things, driven costs, related costs. Here in the second one, you set up new cost centers. For example, you will have a sewage plant or an incinerator. What is a sewage plant? A sewage plant, what happens here? What does a sewage plant do? What does it do? It what? Cleans the is in itself a cost center. Why? Is there cost to maintain such? Yes? Do you have salary of people who manage this and do all this? Do you think you have some chemicals and things that you need to use to clean it? How about electricity? I need to run this with electricity, correct? So it has its own cost center. Okay? And it's additional cost as well. Now, how about this? What's this? What do you do in here? You burn. You burn what? Solid waste. Okay? You burn solid waste. What do you produce when you burn solid waste? Electricity. Correct. Yeah? What happens when you burn solid waste? The incinerator will give you electricity. The electricity flows back into the factory. Got that? So you have a sustainable electricity. Again, in itself is a cost center. You have to set up the incinerator, which means it's a capital expenditure. You have to have engineers to manage it. You have to be able to have a certain safety. So in itself, there are costs related to it. Okay? So what are these costs? These are called environment-related costs. You set it up because you are having to deal with environmental issues. Okay? Environment-driven cost is something that you have to do because, again, okay, it's your normal production process, but you have to change something, okay, because of environmental issues. But all of them are environmental costs. So what happens here? If you have activity-based costing, these two are additional activities. You remember activities we talked about? Yes? Okay. Activity-based costing. So therefore, if you have newer cost centers, you have new activities to talk about. Okay? So in this case, what happened? You have increased depreciation, higher staff. Okay? So you have all that. Now, what are the three again? Because there are four, correct? What are the three accounting methods? Number one? Inflow, outflow. We're talking about only materials. Next one? Low cost, which means material cost and disposal. Three things, correct? Third, environmental activity-based costing. Okay, don't forget the environment. Number four is life cycle costing. Now, we just talked about it. In other words, in those stages, do you understand? If there are any environmental issues or costs, you have to input it in whatever stage, correct? So, for example, if the cost is a new machine that is environmental related, so when you actually set up at the introduction stage, you have to put in a cost of the machine that is environmental related, okay? How about setting up the sewage and the incinerator? Will we have to put it in our costing? In our life cycle costs? Yes, of course. Okay, you have to consider that. When you're costing out in terms of variable costs, if you're asked to make sure that you have biodegradable materials, etc., would you put that in your life cycle cost? Yes. In other words, in every stage of your life cycle, if there is something that you need to put in that is related to environmental cost, you need to include it. Let us say you discontinue your product and the machine that you're using is something that needs to be disposed of properly. Okay? In other words, you have to bury the entire machine in a certain area. You need to spend for that. You need to decommission the machine, ship it, and bury it properly. Dispose of it, otherwise it is harmful to the environment. Okay? Cost? Yes. You add it in your life cycle? Yes. What stage? What stage will I add this cost? Decline, the last one, correct? No, you're declining, you're decommissioning.
No, I mean that we recognize that the cost of the removal into the fixed asset and then we generate something to depreciation.
No, to decommission means that's how you dispose of it. So
But the cost is can be recognized on the fixed asset if we especially the cost will be a removal for the extent of the that of decline.
You mean in the depreciation?
Yes.
No. This is different. This is different. Depreciation is your cost over the life of the asset, correct?
Right.
Yes? Yes, I understand. Yeah. But, so, when I say decommission, and is when you actually, when if you don't no longer use it, you have additional expenses to actually take it and maybe pull it apart, bury it on the ground, okay, you understand? Something like that, depending on what is your machine. That is what is decommissioning. So it's an additional expense, aside from the purchase price. So that part will be in the decline stage. Okay, that's where you put it. Got that? Alright, so again, okay, your life cycle costs will be affected, therefore, you'll be able to see how environmental issues affect your profitability at the end. You remember, we know how to calculate profitability, right? Okay? Now, if this additional cost will hurt your profitability, you need to find out how to save on other costs so that your profitability will increase. Okay? Alright, so here is a company who is manufacturing chemicals, okay, for use in agriculture industry. So, some environmental costs they need to consider is what? Okay, they need to consider cost of their raw materials. Okay, they need to consider if their waste, okay, will affect. Now remember, their factory is making chemicals. So what happens? Okay, so if they're making chemicals, their waste must be what? It's what? Poisonous, correct? Poison, toxic is the word, correct? Okay. So their waste must be toxic, which means they have to consider that when they have their waste, they have to actually dispose of it properly, which means they need to pay for all the costs, okay, environmental taxes, and if they do not comply, they will be fined. You know what I mean by fine, correct? The government will charge them money for not doing and helping the environment. Water consumption. As a manufacturing company, you actually pay for the water 2 times, you know? 2 times. Why? First, you buy the water to make sure that you have something for production, right? Second, you pay for the water to be thrown away properly. So you pay twice. Okay? Pay twice. So if you try to actually or dispose of it properly, so you need to make sure that you reduce. Okay? That's why one of the ways instead of throwing it, you recycle it. Okay? So you don't buy. Energy. This company must identify how to reduce the use of energy or to reduce wasteful practices. In other words, they will have to reduce unproductive use of energy. Light, air conditioning, power. Okay? Another thing, transport. They need to invest in more fuel efficient vehicles. Okay? Or vehicles that use, okay, environmentally friendly materials. Okay? And then of course, consumables, we talked about that earlier. Okay? So, this is a chemical company. Now, why am I showing you that example? Maybe it's a question in the exam. Okay? If they give you an exam, a scenario, and they will ask you, what are the issues relating to environment that this company must consider? So what headings you need to remember? Waste, water consumption, energy, transport, and consumables. That is the first slide after I talk to you about the syllabus, correct? So, you need to look at that. You need to look at the accounting methods. You remember the accounting methods? Yeah? The 4? Alright? Not there. Not there? I would have to bring it to the problem is there. Okay. I'll copy this. Okay. All right, question. All right, come on, one question before you leave. If you give me the answer, you can go. All right. Which of the above techniques could be used by a company to account for environmental costs? Answer? Yes, of course. That's how easy can life be. Alright, okay. It's this one. One more. Okay. One more, please. One more. Which of the following statements regarding environmental cost accounting are true? Okay, come on. Or is true? Oh, which are true? Oh, you have choices. Okay, you have choices, right? Okay. Which ones are? Okay, answer? A, B, C, or D? Okay, let's look again. Which one is your answer? A, B, C, or D? Okay. Who says A? What is A? A is 1, 2, and 4. Anybody A? B. Only one? Or you didn't finish reading it? Okay, you didn't finish reading it. You're C, okay. What are you? C? Okay, C. B, only one B? Okay, again. A. Okay, the one who gets the correct answer goes home, huh? B. B, you change your mind? B, okay. B. Okay, good. C. Okay. D. No, okay, good. Let's move back. Okay. What's the answer? D. I show you. Wait. Number 1 is a choice, correct? Yes. That's very much. Right? Number 2 is wrong. What is supposed to say here? Low cost analysis, correct? The input-output is only material, but here there is system and delivery. Oh. What's wrong with number 3? Number 3 looks correct, right? It is not correct. Because of this word. Should be what? Not driven. Related, correct. This is the one that has the cost center. Remember the cost center? Remember the 2 sewage system? Sewage and incinerator. Right? And of course, last one is correct. So, answer is B. Alright? Answer is B. Excellent. Alright? There's one more. There's no more. It's only the summary. So, basically, it's your environmental costs, the principles, and the methods of accounting. Yeah? So, you have your homework. These are the specimens, again. So, it will guide you where to look for information. I gave you a homework to do. I will post the answers to this on Google Classroom and the next chapter. So we will see each other back on February 16. All right, any questions? Okay? Here? Alright, good. So, have fun studying. Read the next chapters, please. Work on specimen questions, please. Okay? Do you have your revision kits? It's supposed to be a hard copy for you. Yes? Specimen revision kits, please study them. Alright? Okay? Good. Alright. So thank you very much, and I'll see you when I see you. Happy Chinese New Year, everybody. Have a nice
Cái gì mà